I'm going to pray for us before we get started, if that's all right. Hey, Jesus, thank you so much for giving us this day, and please let us use it to hear the things you have for us that may be new and teach us the things that we need to learn. Amen. I'm going to be teaching from chapter 3 of Psalms, and so I'm going to open that up. And it says, "O Lord, I have so many enemies, so many are against me. So many are saying, God will never rescue him. But you, O Lord, are a shield around me. You are my glory, the one who holds my head high. I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and slept. Yet I woke up in safety, for the Lord was watching over me. I am not afraid of 10,000 enemies who surround me on every side. Arise, O Lord, rescue me, my God. Slap all my enemies in the face. Shatter the teeth of the wicked. Victory comes from you, O Lord. May you bless your people." I'm going to read verse 5 one more time. I lay down and slept, yet I woke up in safety, for the Lord was watching over me. So I don't know if it's just my Mexican blood in me, but I love a good nap. Siestas are my favorite things, and I've noticed that during my time on Christmas break this past few weeks, I've spent most of it asleep and in my pajamas. But something that I realized was probably loving the sleep, because this semester has been a very difficult one, and one that I was very much lacking sleep most of the semester. But something my roommates and I had talked about throughout this past few years of living together, learning how to be an adult, which is not easy, that we're always in a constant state of being tired. And I don't know if that's just us or all of the adults, but that is where we're at in life. But I learned some other things this semester, but more importantly, things from my freshman year. I think that's some of the most transforming years. In general is college, but freshman year was definitely a big one for me. But I learned what it meant to be sleep deprived. And so it was midnight my freshman year, and my roommate and I, Lauren, were trying to get some sleep because we had midterms the next day. It was our first set of midterms. And so we were trying to be good students and get all the sleep, but the Lord changed our plans like he always does. And before we had gotten into bed, Lauren decided, or was feeling sick. And so she was having a stomach ache, but that wasn't really unusual for her. And so we're like, okay, we'll just take some medicine, she'll be fine. But after about an hour, she was still in pain and ended up on the bathroom floor in like the fetal position and just not doing well. Ended up that she started dry heaving and was not okay. Obviously, this was not a normal stomach ache. And to give you a perspective of who Lauren is, she is smaller than I am. So she's like 5'2", just a little nugget of a human. Okay, so like small person. And she was making the most noise I've ever heard in my life. I'm pretty sure Canada was awoken that night because of all of the noise that she was making. So she was really loud, and in that, it woke up our sweet mate, Megan. And so Megan came in and was checking on her and realizing she's not okay. And so she's on the floor just kind of screaming, and our RA and RD came, and they were not convinced, though, that she needed to go to the hospital. And so we spent another hour just of her screaming, just being laying there, and they're like, "I'm sure she's fine." No, she's not. But that's okay. So we ended up through this hour trying to convince them that we needed to take her to the hospital. So finally they agree, but she couldn't even stand. And so we ended up going, and Megan tried to find a wheelchair. I suggested just rolling her down the 4 flights of stairs, but apparently that was not what we wanted to do. And so we decided that we go ahead and get the wheelchair. So Megan's working on the wheelchair, and I go and get my car. And so at Belmont, we have parking garages underneath our academic buildings. And so I'm running across the lawn in my slippers, which we're not allowed to be doing, but doing it anyway, and just falling everywhere, and get to the academic building, and you have to scan your ID to get in, trying to scan it, and it's locked because there's no classes at that time. So it's all locked. So we couldn't get in, and so I had to run around to the front of the parking garage and then run all the way down and around all of the parking garage, all of the levels, because all of the doors were locked to use the elevators or the stairs. So going down to the bottom of the parking garage, because that's where the freshmen have to park, and so I go out, then go all the way back up and get to the dorm and get Lauren in the car, and our RD says, "Okay, we're just going to meet you there at the hospital." We're like, "Okay, where are we going?" Because Megan and I are aren't from Tennessee, aren't from Nashville, and so we of course have no idea how to work anything at Vanderbilt. And so we're trying to drive. They said it was by Dunkin' Donuts, and we knew where that was. And so we went to Dunkin'. Then they kind of figured out where we were going and looking at all the signs and realized that there was emergency signs. We're like headed towards that one, and then realized it was children's emergency. And we looked at each other and then looked at Lauren. We're like, she's small enough. It's going to work. So we just went ahead and took Lauren to the children's emergency. I ended up getting her taken care of, but we kind of had to play mom and dad to her because of her parents living in Connecticut. And so we had to figure out all of her medical records and everything. And we had just met a few months before. So that was very interesting, having to do all these things. We ended up staying up the whole night with her, and then the next day because she had appendicitis. So she got out of her midterms, so that was thankful for her, but Megan and I were not out of our midterms. Apparently that isn't a thing, and so we were going back and forth between staying with her at the hospital and going and taking midterms, and just back and forth, and we did this for about 30 hours straight. So we were absolutely delusional, only had a few different breaks where we had a panic attack in the parking garage, but it all ended up okay. That was the first time that I totally felt like I was sleep deprived. But being sleep deprived is one of the worst feelings that I've ever felt, but something that has been even worse that I've learned is when you have the time to sleep and you're laying in bed, but you just can't. And that's something that I end up doing often, where I just have a list going on in my head of all the things I need to do tomorrow, the things I should have done today, and all of those things happen. I looked up from Duke Medical Center this quote that says that people have little control over their thoughts at night because they are going in and out of a light stage of sleep, even if they think they are still awake. So in America, we have a deprivation of sleep. We have this epidemic that we cannot sleep in America. Actually, it's 60 million Americans every night struggle with sleeping. And that's something that I looked up what the common causes were, and they are anxiety, stress, and depression. Those are all things that I think in 2018 most people struggle with, at least one of them, or at least once in a while with one of them. And so I learned a little bit more about sleep and realizing that sleep is not just something that you use to, that we just do or something that we just need for rest, but sleep is actually something that heals us. When you sleep, you actually grow. That's the biggest time that you grow. When you sleep, you lose weight. I don't know if you knew that, but you lose weight when you sleep. But you also, your body is literally made to heal itself when you sleep. And I know that most of the time when I'm laying awake at night, I really need healing. That's what I'm thinking about a lot of the time. But the reasons that I can't sleep aren't because I don't want healing, but more because I don't want humbling. When you sleep, you are being humbled. You can't work when you sleep. You can't make money or provide for your family when you sleep. You can't plan your future when you sleep. You can't take care of anyone else when you sleep. You can't worry about your circumstances when you sleep. You can't protect yourself when you sleep. You can't change anything that's going on in the world when you sleep. You can't do anything when you sleep. When you decide to go to sleep, you're giving up the power to be productive or protective. For the time that you were asleep, you agreed that the world is going to have to do and go along without you. That the world is going to keep spinning even though you're not awake. That's something that's really hard for me to admit. I'm a 2 on the Enneagram, if you know anything about that. And so I really like to be needed. And in my head, I don't like to admit that people don't need me, Jesus doesn't need me, and the world doesn't need me. That doesn't mean that I'm not loved or valued, and don't have anything to offer to the world, but it just means that the world has been going since long before I was here and will be long after I'm gone. Then that is kind of why sleep is an act of worship. Sleeping requires you to surrender all the power and control that you think you have over your life and let God take care of it just for a little while. I'll repeat the verse one more time. I lay down and slept, yet I woke up in safety, for the Lord was watching over me. Matthew Henry explained this verse beautifully in his commentary on this passage. This application is to the common mercies of every night, for which we ought to give thanks every morning. Many lie down and cannot sleep, through pain of body or anguish of mind, or the continual alarms of fear in the night. But it seems here rather to be meant of the calmness of David's spirit in the midst of his dangers. The Lord, by his grace, made him easy. It is a great mercy when we are in trouble to have our mind stayed upon God. So while David was hiding from Saul, I'm sure he was experiencing extreme stress and anxiety, but he still decided that he needed sleep and trusted the Lord that if he could protect him when he was alive, he could also protect, or when he was awake, he could protect him when he was asleep. And sleep is one of the beautiful ways that we show our humanity and the limitations that we have as humans. God gave us that gift of a limitation. We physically cannot continue living without sleep. It is in our DNA that we have a time daily where we can not be in control. But not having control means having faith. You must decide that wherever the worries are that are filling your head and your mind, that God can handle. He can handle watching over the loved ones that are sick while you sleep. He can handle planning on how the bills are going to get paid while you sleep. He can handle all the worries of tomorrow while you sleep. I want to close with one more story about my roommates. I really love them a lot. So during our first semester living together, I learned that not everybody was raised the way that I was, and didn't learn how to do the Sabbath in the way that I did. So I had learned these 3 steps on how to do Sundays, and that is church, lunch, nap. That's always how my Sundays work. It's always how they have been, and I thought that's how everybody else did them, but always church, lunch, nap. And so I always in the mornings would tiptoe around the dorm, even being on a Christian campus. It's amazing how quiet Sunday mornings are. And so I'm trying to be quiet and everything, but once I got back after church, Lauren and Megan and I would have lunch, and then I would go back to the dorm and I would take a nap. It's always what I did. It was part of just my kind of Sunday ritual. But one Sunday, I woke up from my nap and realized that no one was awake. Everyone in my dorm was asleep. And I mean not like asleep because like they planned to go ahead and take a nap. Like I mean they were just like passed out in random places apart, like in the dorm. And so it was so funny to me that this ritual that I had always had, church, lunch, nap, had just become a ritual for them as well. But this semester, this ritual was changed because I was an intern at my church. Sundays became the most busiest days of my weeks, which I love, but also meant that I had no longer a time to take a nap. And this was really hard for me this semester, and I felt the furthest away from God this semester. Even though I was in church more and I was around even more godly people, I made the sacrifice of giving up some sleep for a lot of really good things. But God did some really good things, but he even rested on the 7th day. And Jesus did some really good things, but he even rested when he needed to. So as we're beginning this year, I would like to encourage all of the preachers in here to protect your time of rest and enjoy the Sabbath. Your Sabbath may not look like mine. It may have more steps or only one, but definitely find a time that you can enjoy your Sabbath. I'm sure there are plenty of really good things that are going to try to be put or filled in that place. Maybe teaching another small group, or visiting the sick, or volunteering again, or mentoring another believer, which are all really important and good things for us as preachers to do. But we also need to realize that we're not the only person that was called to do those things. We need to humble ourselves and know that not only were you, or you are not only the one who's going to do them. It is not all up to you to save everyone. I forget that a lot, and my dad always has to remind me by quoting the flight attendant's advice. Put your mask on before helping others. We aren't selfish for taking our time to rest. We need the time to be healed, and we need the time to be humbled. And by doing this, we can spend 2018 worshiping while we sleep.